Nobody had ever seen a ship like it before. Not in this quadrant, not in any charted corner of the galaxy. It appeared without warning, rising from the dead silence of a wormhole that hadn't even been there 5 seconds earlier. The rift tore open space like paper, and from it came the warship, blacker than the void, shaped like a nightmare with jagged wings, and a body that shimmered with some kind of armor the Galactic Empire's sensors couldn't identify. On the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Vornaxis, High Marshal Zarek clicked his mandibles nervously. The Empire's fleet had conquered planets just for the thrill of it. They'd vaporized moons to send a message. But even he, a seasoned killer from the Raxion hive, felt a slither of unease crawl down his spine. This wasn't just a warship. This was something else. "Scan it," Zarek barked. "Immediately." The sensor drones didn't even return. They just vanished. No data, no readings, not even a blip. The warship hovered like a predator that knew it was at the top of the food chain. Its hull rippled like liquid metal, and glowing crimson lines pulsed across its sides, beating in time with some deep internal energy source. No signal, no code, no identification. It just watched. And then it spoke, not through radio, not through the usual universal protocol. It injected its voice directly into every mind on every ship within 10,000 kilometers. "We warned you. You took what was ours. Now we take it back." The voice was human. Rough, gravelly, full of venom, ancient and angry. Zarek recoiled, his inner membrane twitching. "What in the galaxy is that thing?" growled Admiral Niesel, a crystalline being from the Thalos cluster. Even she looked spooked, her glowing body dimming at the edges. "It's speaking directly into our minds." "It's a violation of mental space," whispered a junior tactician. "That's illegal under the Interstellar Code." "This ship doesn't care about your codes," Zarek muttered. "That's a human vessel." There was silence on the command deck, and then a wave of fear hit. Humans had been declared extinct over a century ago, wiped out during the Siege of Sol. Their home system was obliterated, their colonies burned. The Empire had made sure of it, hadn't they? So what the hell was this? And then the human warship moved. It didn't fire lasers or plasma beams. It screamed, a sonic pulse that tore through shields like wet paper, making every crew member in the fleet vomit, scream, or collapse. Thousands of ships blinked out. No explosion, no debris, just gone. Deleted. Panic spread like wildfire. "What kind of weapon is that?" Niesel cried, clutching her head. "It's not a weapon, it's a message," Zarek replied. His voice was barely a whisper now. "They're telling us we're not alone anymore." The warship launched no fighters. It didn't need to. It drifted through the Empire's fleet like a shadow, and every ship it passed either shut down completely or imploded in on itself like crushed tin. The Galactic Empire had never seen anything like it. This wasn't warfare, it was judgment. And behind the horror, the whispers began, from soldiers, from slaves, from rebel cells. "The humans are back." They didn't die, they evolved. No, they became monsters to survive. And out there, in the wreckage, the human warship turned slowly and disappeared back into the rift. But its warning echoed through every mind in the sector. "Next time, we bring the fleet." 2 days passed. 2 long, silent, blood-chilling days. The Imperial Command Hub on Virex 9 was in full lockdown. Hundreds of high-ranking officials from across the Galactic Empire had been pulled in for an emergency assembly. The atmosphere was nothing like usual. No pomp, no posturing. Just fear. Cold, honest fear. Zarek stood before the gathering, his eyes sunken, his voice flat. "We lost 17 dreadnoughts, 49 cruisers, nearly 80 support crafts, all without firing a single successful shot. There were no survivors on any of those ships. Not one. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Some dismissed it, still clinging to denial. Others couldn't stop trembling. The Emperor's hologram flickered into view, his hulking form dwarfing the rest of the council. Emperor Kalsar was not a being easily shaken. He had personally executed planetary governors with his bare claws, but even his tone had a strange twitch to it now. "What do we know of the humans?" Zarek hesitated. "Very little. They were confirmed extinct after the siege of Sol. Our records show no surviving colonies. Their technology, while chaotic and unpredictable, never approached what we saw 2 days ago." "Then explain that ship," the Emperor growled. "We can't. Nothing in our archives comes close. We recovered no debris. Their energy signature is untraceable. It's like they returned from death with weapons forged in some hell we can't understand." Kalsar's eyes narrowed. "Then we prepare for hell." That same day, a secret recon probe was launched. It was cloaked in triple-phase shadow tech, designed to be undetectable even by fourth-dimensional entities. Its mission: go back to the edge of the rift where the warship appeared. Find answers. It never reported back. But the probe's final recording, just 3 seconds of scrambled video, leaked. The footage showed something the Empire refused to admit was possible. A fleet. Dozens of human warships, each different in shape and style, but with the same impossible aura. Silent, watching, waiting. Each ship bore a name etched in rough Terran script. Vengeance, Soul's Fury, Earth's Ghost, and one that made even the Emperor pause: the Children of No Mercy. The panic was no longer silent. The civilian sectors started to riot. News spread, fast and raw, carried through underground info channels and rebel frequencies. The Empire had lied. Humans were alive, and they weren't coming in peace. Resistance groups, long hunted, weakened, fragmented, started resurfacing. On planets like Draxin, Gale Toe, and Zarn 3, old flags were raised. Not of Earth, not of Sol, but something new. A black sun over blood-red stars, the symbol of vengeance. And among the terrified elite of the Empire, rumors spread like wildfire. They said the humans had lived in the black voids between galaxies, evolving, adapting, surviving like monsters in the dark. They said they didn't just want retribution. They wanted the galaxy to remember. And Zarek, alone in his quarters, kept replaying that voice, that horrible human voice that had crawled into his skull and branded itself there. "We warned you. You took what was ours. Now we take it back." He didn't sleep. He couldn't, because he'd been there during the siege of Sol. He had helped burn Earth. And now he was starting to believe that was the worst mistake the Empire had ever made. The sky above the prison moon of Cardus V was the color of ash. Down below, in cell block E19, the walls vibrated with distant explosions. The guards were gone, either dead or long fled. Prisoners stood around the flickering security lights, not celebrating, not rioting, just listening. Everyone had heard the same thing on the emergency frequency loop. "The Empire has been breached. The humans have returned." For Valen Roke, this was more than just news. It was prophecy fulfilled. He sat cross-legged in his cell, staring at the crude symbol he'd carved into the floor a decade ago. A crude Earth with burning wings. The others used to mock him for it, called him the last human loyalist, a delusional relic of a dead species. But now even the cynics were quiet. "Was it real?" someone asked from the cell across. "That ship, the thing that erased the fleet near Threnox?" "They say it screamed," said another, "and the sound alone killed 6,000 beings." "It wasn't just a ship," Valen finally spoke, rising to his feet. "It was a warning and a promise." They all turned to him now, those same men and creatures who once ridiculed him. What promise? That the age of cowards is over, that the Empire will pay. Valen was no ordinary prisoner. He'd once served in the Terran Shadow Corps, a Black Ops division the Empire tried to erase from history after the war. He'd been captured after the fall of Mars's last resistance outpost, tortured, forgotten, but not broken. He had always known the humans would return. He just never thought they'd return like this. A loud boom shook the prison. The main gate's blast door began to bend inward like paper. Screams echoed in the distance. The prison's AI flickered online, garbled and frantic. "Security breach! Breach! Unknown vessel! Imminent collapse! Flee!" Then it cut off. Total silence. For 3 heartbeats, the prisoners stared at one another. And then the blast door exploded inward. The smoke cleared to reveal a single figure. Tall, wrapped in dark exo-armor, the kind not seen since the old war. Red visor, black shoulder plates, the emblem of Earth, cracked down the middle, still visible on the chest. The figure said nothing. Just stepped inside, slow and calm, as if it had all the time in the galaxy. And Valen smiled. He knew that armor. "Kara," he whispered. The figure turned toward him slightly. The helmet peeled back, revealing a face Valen had memorized in another life. Pale, scarred, eyes like frost-bitten steel. "Been a while," she said, voice dry as a grave. "You're alive," he breathed. "They told me you died during the fall of Titan." "I did," she said, "but death doesn't mean much anymore." She tossed him a pulse rifle, an old Earth model, burn-scored but functional. "Suit up, you're coming with us." "Us?" She tilted her head toward the hole behind her. Shapes moved in the smoke. Humanoid, monstrous, armored, a squad of human specters. "We're everywhere now," she said, "and this galaxy's going to remember why it feared us." Around them, prisoners dropped to their knees. Not out of fear, out of something worse for the Empire. Hope. "Where are we going?" Valen asked. "To burn down the thing that tried to bury us," she said, "starting with the bastards who bombed Earth. You remember Zirek?" Valen's eyes narrowed. "Too well." "Good. Because he's next." She turned, walking into the smoke again. Valen looked down once more at the carving on the floor. Earth with burning wings. Not a dream, not madness, prophecy. He slung the rifle over his shoulder and followed her into the darkness, heart pounding with something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Because the galaxy had poked a sleeping dragon, and now the humans were awake. High Marshal Zirek didn't eat, didn't sleep. He barely even moved anymore. He sat alone in his fortified quarters aboard the flagship Dominion's Wrath, orbiting above the capital world of Virex Prime. His claws twitched occasionally, involuntarily. His usually proud wings had gone dull, pressed tight against his back like a sick creature hiding from predators. Outside his chamber's window, the might of the Empire glistened in formation. Warships, battlecruisers, planetary defense cannons. It should have comforted him. It didn't. He knew it wouldn't matter. The humans were back, and they were doing something far worse than fighting. They were making people remember. Across the galaxy, planets once loyal to the Empire were turning. Whole cities were rioting, broadcasting human propaganda like it was a religious awakening. A single phrase repeated across every hacked frequency, from mining colonies to academic hubs. We were broken, but we learned. Now we return, not as victims, as nightmares. The worst part? No one could stop it. The humans weren't coming in fleets to occupy or destroy. They were sending in ghosts, elite strike teams, black ships, coordinated sabotage. Planetary governors were being found with their skulls crushed in their own bunkers. Empire-controlled news centers were exploding mid-broadcast. Entire outposts vanished without a trace. Zarek had seen the footage. That face, the woman with the pale skin and dead eyes, the one leading the squad on Cardus 5. She didn't wear insignia. She didn't speak much. She just left messages behind, scrawled in Terran script on blood-stained walls. This is for Earth. She was on every bounty list now. Codename, the Revenant, and she wasn't alone. The rebels were calling themselves the Black Sun Armada, a scattered fleet that didn't exist on any radar, made up of exiles, survivors, and something far worse. New humans, forged in deep space where physics bent and time twisted. The Empire's intelligence division insisted they were few in number. But Zarek knew better. He remembered what humans were like before the fall. Clever, stubborn, vicious when cornered. They never stopped adapting. You couldn't break them. Not truly. And the ones who'd survived the siege of Sol, they weren't just survivors. They were what survived hell. Suddenly, a sharp beep cut through the silence of his chamber. Incoming call. Priority override. He clicked to accept. A three-dimensional projection flickered into place. It was Emperor Kalsar. Zarek straightened immediately. Marshal Zarek, the Emperor said, voice like distant thunder. We've received a message, intercepted from an unsecured rebel channel. Zarek nodded grimly. Another threat? The Emperor shook his head slowly. Worse, a promise the audio played. It was rough, staticky, but unmistakably human. We don't want your surrender. We want your screams. You taught us extinction. Now we teach you revenge. Then the voice laughed, cold, hollow. No joy in it, just venom. Zarek, you burned Earth. We remember. We're coming for you. The audio cut. Zarek felt a tremor run through his bones. He had never told anyone he'd been part of the team that authorized the bombardment. His name was buried deep in classified logs. How had they known? They've breached our archives, Zarek whispered. This is personal. They want to dismantle the Empire piece by piece, Kalsar growled. And you are now their symbol of vengeance. I should step down, Zarek said suddenly. If I go into hiding... No, the Emperor interrupted. You will be bait. Zarek looked up, eyes wide. You will remain in command. We'll leak intel, let them come, and when they do, the trap will close. Zarek nodded stiffly. It was a plan. A desperate one. But it was something. The call ended. He stood slowly, walking towards the window. The stars blinked peacefully above, but he could feel the storm coming. In his chest, in the gravity of the air, it was like the galaxy had shifted. Behind him, the lights in the room flickered, just for a second. But he noticed. And somewhere, deep in the black space beyond radar and reach, Kara, the Revenant, watched her target from a hidden scout vessel. He's on the move, she muttered, just like we wanted. Valen nodded beside her. Ready for part 2? She didn't answer. Her eyes were already locked on the Dominion's wrath, and her finger was tightening on the activation switch. The Dominion's wrath began its slow orbit around Virex Prime, unaware that the ghost of Earth's fury was already watching from less than 1,000 kilometers away. Kara stood in the observation bay of the Black Sun Wraith, a vessel so deeply cloaked in stealth tech it didn't reflect light or gravity. It wasn't even visible on visual scanners. To the Empire, it didn't exist. But to Kara, and the few like her who had survived what the galaxy tried to forget, it was home. She studied the Imperial flagship, watching the shimmering blue shields ripple across its hull. Zarek's moved into Sector 3, Valen reported from behind her. Standard defense posture, but they've got fighters patrolling at 3-minute intervals, rotational pattern, and at least 2 carrier cruisers within strike range. Kara didn't turn. They're waiting for us. They want us to come, he said, stepping closer. This is the trap. I know. And we're still going? Kara's eyes narrowed. Of course we are. She turned, walking across the control platform toward the mission table, where the other 4 members of her team were reviewing layouts of the Dominion's wrath. They were all different, one part Terran, one part something else. Survivors who had spent too long in the void between galaxies, in abandoned science vessels, old mining colonies, and deep black places where even the laws of physics grew tired. Let's be clear, Kara said, voice firm. This isn't about killing Zirek. That's the easy part. Then what's the hard part? Asked Ral, a 4-armed soldier who'd once fought in Earth's final trench on Europa. Making sure everyone sees it. She tapped the display. We override their comms, hijack the broadcast stream. We show every system, every loyalist, every citizen, exactly what happens to Empire monsters. You want to execute him live? I want them to remember Earth. I want them to see that we didn't die. We evolved, and we haven't forgotten. No one argued, because they all wanted the same thing. Zirek wasn't just a target, he was a symbol. The one who had ordered the orbital bombardment that turned Earth's oceans into vapor and sent its cities tumbling into craters. He didn't just destroy their world, he laughed doing it. Kara still remembered the broadcast. Zirek on the screen, saluting the Empire's victory, standing beneath the burning image of Earth. She hadn't seen that image since. Not until she woke up floating in the ruins of Titan's escape facility, barely alive. A machine kept her breathing. A forgotten A. I reactivated during the collapse, repaired her piece by piece with stolen tech and alien scrap, and when she finally stood again, all that remained was vengeance. Now it was time. Suit up, she said. We breach in 30. Inside the Dominion's wrath, Zirek paced his private corridor, surrounded by 2 elite guards and a nervous young aide. Sweat glistened on the aide's temples despite the climate control. There are rumors, the aide whispered, about the Revenant, that she's already in this system. She's a shadow, Zirek spat. A ghost with good press. We've laid the perfect trap. She'll come, and we'll end this pathetic rebellion with one broadcast. But if she's evolved, like they say, then she bleeds like the rest. Zirek didn't notice the flicker in the lights. He didn't hear the low static crackling from the floor panels, and he certainly didn't hear the soft click from the vent above. But he noticed the explosion. It hit the corridor next to his, throwing him to the ground, blowing out oxygen seals. Fire, smoke, chaos. Lock the bulkheads, he roared, scrambling to his feet. His guards closed around him. Too late. Kara dropped from the ceiling like a shadow with form, her armor shifting, eyes glowing red. Her blade sliced through the first guard before he drew his weapon. Valen came in through the smoke, pulse rifle chattering. Zirek tried to flee. Kara grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. He stared at her, eyes wide, gills twitching. You, he rasped. You should be dead. She leaned in close, eyes locked on his. I was. She activated her comlink. Broadcast is live, Ral confirmed from the ship. Every screen in the system flickered. Every citizen, every soldier, every loyalist saw what came next. Kara turned to the camera. This is for Earth, and pulled the blade across Zirek's throat. The scream echoed across star systems. Millions watched in silence, on factory moons, on orbiting trade hubs, even deep inside the glass towers of the Empire's bureaucratic core. Every screen flickered with static, then locked onto a single brutal image. High Marshal Zarek, blood pouring from his throat, eyes frozen wide in disbelief, collapsing to the floor as Kara stood over him like a reaper from forgotten legends. She didn't flinch, didn't gloat. She simply stared into the camera as if daring the galaxy to look away. and then the feed cut to black. For a moment, there was silence, then chaos. In less than an hour, 3 Outer Rim colonies declared independence from the Empire. Soldiers began deserting their posts. Civilians poured into the streets, many holding makeshift banners bearing the mark of the Black Sun Armada. Even some mid-tier governors, long silent under the Emperor's rule, began secretly reaching out to rebel contacts, trying to find a way to switch sides before they were next. The fear had changed. It no longer belonged to the oppressed, now it belonged to the throne. Deep inside the Black Sun Wraith, the team regrouped, bloodied but alive. Kara sat alone in the ship's inner chamber, her armor half stripped, the dried blood of Zurek still staining the edges of her gloves. She stared at her own reflection in the darkened panel. She didn't look like a savior. She looked like something that had crawled out of a war long buried under rubble and lies. Valen entered quietly. He'd cleaned up, his pulse rifle slung over his back, a fresh scar along his temple. "You did it," he said softly. "Zurek's gone. The whole damn galaxy saw it." Kara didn't answer. He stepped closer, uncertain. "Isn't this what you wanted?" She finally looked up at him. Her voice was flat. "It's not over." "No," he admitted, "but it's the turning point." Kara stood slowly, the weight of her body heavy, like each movement hurt more than it should. "They'll come harder now. Khalsar won't take this lightly. We humiliated them." "That was the point." "No," she corrected. "The point was to warn them." He frowned. "Warn them? We've shown them what we're capable of, but they haven't seen our full strength yet." Her voice darkened. "We wanted them to know there's no place safe anymore. Not for war criminals. Not for tyrants." Valen hesitated, then nodded. "And what now?" Kara looked down at the blood on her gloves. "Now we make it personal for Khalsar." In the Imperial Palace on Virex Prime, the throne room shook with fury. Emperor Khalsar slammed his obsidian fist down on the command table, shattering it. Shards flew in every direction. The High Council stood frozen, none daring to speak. "She executed Zurek," the Emperor hissed, voice barely human anymore, "and broadcast it like a street show, in front of billions." "She's igniting rebellion in all sectors," muttered one aide. "Even the core is starting to murmur." "Silence!" Khalsar turned, his massive figure looming over them. His golden armor gleamed with rage. "They think this war's about revenge," he growled. "They think their fear makes them powerful. Let me show them what fear truly is." He turned to his warden general, a towering creature clad in red and steel. "Initiate Protocol Darklight." There was a long pause. Even the warden hesitated. "Sire, that protocol was sealed after— Unseal it." Khalsar's voice dropped to a growl that rumbled like thunder. "Bring the Doombringers out of stasis. They've slept long enough." The chamber dimmed, and the Emperor's face twisted into something ancient and cruel. "If the humans want to rise from the ashes, then let them burn again." Back aboard the Wraith, Kara felt the tremor before the ship's systems detected it. A spike in subspace distortion, then a signal. Faint, repeating. One she hadn't heard in decades. She froze. Valen looked at her. "What is it?" she whispered. "Doombringers." He blinked. "Impossible. They were outlawed after the Orion genocide." "They're bringing them back," she said. "The Empire's getting desperate." "What do we do?" Kara looked out into the void, where the stars trembled in anticipation. "We stop hiding," she said. And in that moment, the ghost of Earth stopped being a whisper. It became a war cry. In the cold, dead reach between galaxies, the Doombringers awoke. They didn't scream, didn't groan, didn't roar. They simply opened their eyes, dead white things, rimmed with circuitry and void steel, and the galaxy began to die a little more. The stasis chambers cracked open like eggs, spilling ancient fluid onto the black floors of Vault Theta, a forbidden facility buried inside a neutron star's magnetic core. Built in secret after the Siege of Sol, this place had one purpose: to hold the monsters the Empire had created when it feared the humans would win. And now those monsters walked again. Each Doombringer stood nearly 3 meters tall, draped in armor composed of star-forged alloy and infused with psionic dampeners so they couldn't feel pity, fear, or hesitation. Inside each one was what remained of a former warrior. Alien, human, synthetic? It didn't matter. Once selected, their minds were broken and reprogrammed, turned into pure instruments of destruction. The Empire hadn't used them in decades for a reason. They didn't just kill. They erased. And Kalzar had just ordered a dozen of them deployed across rebel systems. Kara stared at the new intelligence reports with a clenched jaw. Images from the colony world of Jera 9 played on the screen. Grainy at first, then sharp. Black shapes dropping from the sky like armored meteors, each one landing silently before unleashing annihilation. The footage didn't show a firefight. It showed a purge. Whole towns gone. No screams, no bodies, just charred ground and whispers of something that moved too fast for sensors to track. Valen spoke behind her, his voice shaking slightly. "This is what they've been hiding all these years." "They were saving them for us," Kara replied coldly. "Insurance, just in case we ever came back." Rael stepped into the room, red eyes flaring. 3 colonies hit in 48 hours. Minimal resistance. They're targeting any system that raised our flag. "They're trying to cut out the infection," Valen muttered. "No," Kara said, straightening. "They're trying to break the myth. Destroy the hope we gave people when we killed Zarek. This is psychological. A counter-story." Raal leaned over the map display. "We need to strike back. Show them we're not afraid of their monsters." "We don't fight these things head-on," Kara said. "Not yet." Valen frowned. "So what then?" She brought up an older file. It showed diagrams of Vault Theta, internal schematics, energy logs, stasis chamber records. "We go to the source," she said. "We shut the vault down, destroy the birthing chambers, cut the leash before they can release more." Silence followed her words. "You want to break into a vault inside a neutron star?" Rael asked flatly. "That's suicide." "No," Kara said, eyes darkening. "It's war." 3 days later, the Wraith dropped out of slip space on the edge of the magnetic shell surrounding Vault Theta. The system was dead. No suns, no planets, just radiation and the heavy hum of electromagnetic death. No ships dared come here. Not even scavengers. But the Wraith wasn't a normal ship. They coasted in on silent power, shields folded flat against the hull, using the star's gravity and magnetic field to slingshot toward the vault's docking spine. Inside the ship, Kara checked her armor for the 5th time. The plan was insane, she knew, but it had to be done. I-Core active," Rael reported. "We'll have only 7 minutes inside before the radiation fries our stealth mod." "More than enough," Kara replied. They launched. The boarding hooks caught on the outer ring of Vault Theta, digging into ancient alloy. The hull peeled open under Rael's plasma cutter, and the team slipped inside. Everything was dark, silent, like the place itself was asleep and dreaming of slaughter. They moved fast, sliding through corridors lined with stasis tubes and heavy vault doors. Every panel they passed whispered the same word: unstable. As they neared the core chamber, Valen paused beside a sealed tube. His eyes widened. Inside floated something human, or what was left of it. A body stripped of hair, with eyes replaced by chrome lenses, limbs fused with weaponry, chest open to reveal a pulsing core. He stepped back. "They were using our own," he whispered. "Humans," Kara's voice cracked. "They turned us into weapons, even after we died." Ral slammed the charge onto the main console. "You want to give them a message?" he growled. "Let's burn this nightmare down." Kara nodded, her voice low. "Light it up." The explosion tore through Vault Theta like a cleansing fire. No more Doombringers, no more Vault. And across the galaxy, every rebel world cheered. Because the humans hadn't just survived the monsters. They'd killed them at the roots. The galaxy trembled. News of the Vault, Theta destruction rippled outward like a shockwave, bouncing off comms relays and smuggler frequencies, amplified by underground networks and rebel broadcasters. Every corner of the Empire, every system, every planet, every throne room and slum heard the same phrase within a day. "The monsters are dead, the Vault is gone, Earth remembers." Kara didn't make a speech. She didn't need to. The fire spoke for her. On Virex Prime, Emperor Kalsar stood before a fractured war map in the Imperial War Chamber, surrounded by silence. None of his advisors dared speak. He could feel it, the shifting tide. His grip, once absolute, now slipped like sand through fingers. Entire battalions defected overnight. Entire sectors went dark, not from damage, but from defiance. They weren't afraid anymore. They were angry, and worse, they had hope. "She was supposed to be dead," he muttered, barely audible. "Her species extinct. I watched Earth burn." A low voice answered from the shadows behind him. The Warden General, his last remaining loyal enforcer, a thing of metal and rage. "You underestimated what pain makes of a people." Kalsar turned sharply. "Then perhaps it's time I remind them what true power looks like." He reached for the console embedded in his throne. A final measure. A code buried beneath layers of protocols and bloodlocks. Something built in secret after the siege. No one expected Earth to fight back. Not really. To most of the galaxy, humans were just another primitive species that had barely discovered faster-than-light travel. Their planet was small, noisy, polluted. Their leaders squabbled over invisible lines, and their people worshipped 1,000 different gods, many of them cruel. But what made humanity dangerous wasn't their weapons, or even their technology. It was something worse. They didn't know how to surrender. When the Varn Dominion arrived, towering insectoids with hive minds sharper than any supercomputer, they sent a single envoy ship to Earth's orbit. It hovered over the Atlantic Ocean for days, blotting out the sky in 13 nations. On the 6th day, it broadcast a message to every frequency known to mankind, translated into every major language. "Submit. You are not the first. You will not be the last. Your species will serve, or your world will burn." Most of the galaxy knew that voice. It was the same message delivered to thousands of conquered civilizations, from the ice dwellers of Thurnos to the silicon beings of Delta IV. All had bowed before the Varn. Resistance had lasted on average less than 17 hours. There were no peace talks, no diplomacy, only domination. But humans weren't like the others. For a full day, Earth's networks went dark. Every government vanished into bunkers. Every military base went silent. Then, on the 7th day, a single message beamed back to the Dominion's ship. It was short, brutal, unmistakably human. "Come and try." The Varn took it as a challenge. They liked that. It made the assimilation more satisfying when the prey fought back. On the 8th day, the sky above Earth split open with the arrival of the Varn fleet. Over 200 warships descended from orbit like silver daggers piercing the clouds. They hovered above major cities: New York, Shanghai, London, Nairobi, Mumbai. They expected panic, screaming, mass surrender. What they got was silence. Then, the first shots were fired, not from the Varn, but from Earth. Laser platforms hidden in Antarctica sliced through the belly of the lead ship over the South Pole. In orbit, satellite swarms exploded into coordinated attacks, blinding Varn sensors and jamming communication channels. Stealth fighters launched from underwater bases near the Mariana Trench, targeting engines and communication arrays with surgical precision. Humanity didn't respond with diplomacy. They responded with fire. The Varn screamed. Not because of the damage. Primitive weapons weren't a threat to their hulls, but because of the sheer audacity. No species had ever dared to strike first. The humans didn't even try to negotiate. From that moment on, the Varn knew this wasn't a standard conquest. This was war. The news spread fast across the stars. The Galactic Council, long corrupted by fear of the Varn, watched the Earth conflict with uneasy fascination. Entire systems tuned into the battlefeeds. No one had ever resisted this long. 17 hours passed, then 24, then 48. And Earth was still standing. Cities burned, yes. Millions died in the first 3 days alone. But the Varn weren't prepared for the kind of war humans fought. They weren't prepared for nuclear-tipped missiles launched from secret silos. They weren't prepared for cyber warfare that turned their own drones against them. They weren't prepared for human insurgents who blew themselves up inside Varn ships with makeshift explosives, smiling as they died. And they definitely weren't prepared for what came next. A human message, intercepted and leaked by a rogue Varn technician, went viral across galactic channels. It read, "They came for peace through submission. We gave them war through unity. Humanity will not kneel." The galaxy watched in terror, not because of what the humans had done, but because of what it meant. Someone had finally stood up, and didn't just survive. They fought back, and they weren't done. They had underestimated Earth, and now the Varn were bleeding. By the 5th day, 13 Varn ships had been destroyed. Not disabled. Destroyed. Total annihilation. Gone from their fleet's registry, their command link severed with nothing but static left behind. It wasn't just the losses that rattled the Dominion. It was how humans fought. Dirty, unpredictable, and relentless. A single Varn battleship crashed into the Mojave Desert after its navigation systems were hacked mid-battle. Its blackened wreckage was swarmed not by frightened civilians, but by armed militias and military units working in seamless coordination. Within hours, Earth's scientists had pried open its power cores and reverse-engineered fragments of their tech. Humanity didn't just fight. They learned fast. Meanwhile, the United Earth Council, formed hastily in the chaos of the invasion, had one rule: no retreat. The fractured world governments that had spent decades pointing nuclear weapons at each other were suddenly united like never before. The United States shared command codes with China. Russia opened its vaults to French AI tacticians. Brazil and India combined their space programs to launch a retaliatory orbital assault. This wasn't politics anymore. It was survival. And then came the message that changed everything. In a secured Varn war room aboard their flagship Chrysith, Commander Vikarn, an elder of the Hive, wise with over 1,000 cycles of conquest, reviewed the human resistance footage. Each scene made his antennae twitch. A human soldier, barely out of his teens, dragging an injured Varn drone behind a fallen tank, both legs broken, gun still firing. A woman, armed with a repurposed mining laser, shooting down an assault drone from her rooftop before her building collapsed in flames. A child, no more than 7, screaming into a makeshift transmitter, "We're still here! Come and get us, you monsters!" They weren't supposed to act like this. The Varn's doctrine was clear. Fear breaks morale, and without morale, even the strongest species bend. But fear wasn't working on humans. Vikarn hissed to his advisors, They embrace death. They savor defiance. We have made a mistake. Still, pride is a poison. The Varn didn't retreat. They doubled down. Reinforcements were called from the outer sectors. A second fleet, 3 times the size of the first, was already en route. They would scorch the planet from pole to pole, if necessary. Back on Earth, humanity was preparing for that exact possibility. Deep beneath the Rockies, in an undisclosed location, scientists and military tacticians gathered around a glowing orb, the Varn Navigation Corps salvaged from the Mojave wreck. One of them, Dr. Alina Garvey, stared at its humming surface. "This thing talks to their entire fleet," she whispered. "We just need to figure out how to talk back." "What are you saying?" asked General Iwata, his uniform torn and blood-stained from a blast that had leveled Tokyo's outer ring. "I'm saying," Alina said with a grim smile, "we can hijack them." And just like that, a new weapon entered humanity's arsenal, not one of brute force, but of information warfare. As the second wave of Varn ships approached Earth, they were greeted with a signal, loud, unfiltered, and filled with human noise. Music, laughter, war cries, a cacophony of culture, history, pain, and pride blasted through Varn comms. The humans had weaponized humanity itself. And while the Varn reeled from the psychological assault, Earth launched its counterstrike. This time they didn't just defend. They invaded. The skies cracked again. The second Varn fleet entered Earth's orbit in perfect formation, gleaming black hulls like obsidian knives, blotting out stars. Over 600 ships, each one capable of glassing a continent. But this time, the Dominion wasn't here to conquer. They were here to erase. The humans had humiliated them. Now the Varn wanted to burn Earth into a lesson for every other species watching. But Earth had changed since the first attack. In underground bunkers and floating command centers, humanity waited, not with fear, but with calculation. The stolen Varn Navigation Corps had become their ace. Dr. Alina Garvey and her cyber warfare team had cracked just enough of the alien protocols to do the unthinkable. They couldn't override the entire fleet, but they could turn their ships against each other. As the Varn began descending, a single command pulse, mimicking their internal fleet codes, was launched from Earth's orbital station Last Light, which had been silently constructed in the weeks of chaos. The signal hit 6 ships directly. Their engines flickered. Their internal lights blinked. And then they pivoted. Without warning, the 6 hijacked ships opened fire on their own. The sky erupted with blue plasma bolts and screaming metal. The Dominion fleet staggered in confusion as their own units turned rogue. Chaos tore through their formations. The Varn screamed into their hive mind command. But the signal was scrambled, hijacked by bursts of Earth's viral music files, human propaganda clips, and screams of laughter from children's cartoons. They didn't understand it. That made it worse. Commander Vikarn, watching from the flagship, howled in fury. "They have poisoned the signal! Destroy the traitors! Burn everything!" On Earth's surface, humanity didn't waste a second. In major cities, the counterattack began. The African Union's railguns in Nairobi punctured 2 low-flying Varn dreadnoughts like paper. In Canada, cryo-missiles launched from deep forest outposts froze the hulls of descending troop carriers before shattering them in mid-air. Swarms of modified drones, created in secret Chinese labs, blanketed the skies, using hacked Varn AI to outmaneuver their creators. But this time, the humans didn't stop at defense. From secret bases in Kazakhstan and beneath the oceans near Greenland, Earth launched its most desperate gambit, Project Valkyrie. They had reverse-engineered a Varn atmospheric shuttle, fitted it with a hybrid propulsion system and a primitive human warp drive, and filled it with the best soldiers Earth had left. Not the elite, not the strongest. Those were already dead. These were the last willing. Suicide volunteers. Among them was Captain Reese Calder, former Air Force, face scarred from the first day of the invasion, eyes cold as steel. He stood in the humming cargo bay of Valkyrie 1, strapping into his harness, his voice calm through the comms. "We don't expect to come back, but we'll take as many of those bastards with us as we can." The plan was insane. They were going to board the Varn flagship mid-orbit. Most of the council back on Earth had voted against it, but desperation had silenced doubt. If they could take out the flagship, cripple the hive brain, they might shatter the Dominion's chain of command. The Valkyrie launched, up through the storm clouds into the fire of the descending armada, twisting between plasma fire and debris. 2 escort fighters exploded beside them. A third lost control and veered into a Varn cruiser, sacrificing itself to clear the way. Calder didn't flinch. Inside the flagship, alarms screamed. The Varn were already in disarray, trying to distinguish rogue signals from real commands. They never saw the Valkyrie until it was too close. With a thunderous crash, the shuttle slammed into the hull of the Chrysith, melting its own nose to punch through. The breach opened. A team of 12 humans surged into the hive corridors, guns blazing, oxygen levels dropping. The Varn fought back, shrieking and swarming from the walls, but the humans were faster, meaner, desperate. In the heart of the ship, Calder planted the core charge, built from Earth's last reserves of antimatter, rigged to blow a hole in the command brain big enough to kill a moon. "Tell Earth," he breathed into his comm, voice shaking as blood soaked his armor. "Tell them we made it count." Then silence. From Earth's surface, they saw it, the explosion that tore the Varn flagship in two, a sun blooming in orbit, a shockwave that knocked half the fleet off balance. The hive mind went silent, and for the first time in Varn history, the enemy fleet hesitated. The hesitation lasted only 6 seconds. But in war, 6 seconds can change everything. The Varn fleet, suddenly without direction, floated in a disoriented pattern above Earth's orbit. Their formation broke, their precision vanished. What once moved as one now drifted in jagged pieces, like a beheaded serpent thrashing in its death throes. On Earth, commanders didn't wait for confirmation. The explosion from the flagship had been enough. Calder's final act had bought them a chance, just a sliver. But that's all humans ever needed. "Execute Iron Requiem," General Iwata ordered, eyes red with sleeplessness, voice hoarse but alive. Iron Requiem wasn't a defense plan. It was Earth's offensive contingency. The moment the hive mind was disrupted, every remaining air, sea, and space unit was ordered to push forward, using every ounce of firepower left. It was a suicide assault. But this time it wasn't to survive. It was to win. From the Andes to the Himalayas, missile silos burst open like old scars. Ballistic warheads, both kinetic and nuclear, screamed skyward, painting trails of fire behind them. On the seas, stealth submarines emerged like predators, launching salvos of torpedoes aimed at ships still hovering over the oceans. Even commercial satellites, long useless since the war began, had been rigged with makeshift payloads and crashed into the enemy. Every last ounce of humanity's rage was thrown into the void. The Varn, for all their technology, had never faced war like this. Not like humans fought it. Not with everything on the line. Not with dirty, ruthless, teeth-bared fury. Without their central command brain, the Varn ships relied on sub-command algorithms to respond. But the algorithms weren't prepared for chaos. They weren't built to adapt to human madness. They failed. One by one, the mighty ships began to fall. Some exploded in the upper atmosphere, raining burning shards over already ruined cities. Others drifted aimlessly, intercepted and boarded by human strike teams wearing scavenged Varn armor. A few tried to flee, but even retreat was no longer safe. The moment a ship turned away, Earth's fighters chased it with savage precision, blowing out their engines and letting them tumble into orbit until they cracked apart. The world watched. Every corner of Earth, every remaining screen, every underground bunker tuned in to the feeds. They saw Varn dreadnoughts collapsing in flame. They saw human soldiers planting flags, human flags, on alien hulls. They saw something no other species in the galaxy had ever seen before. They saw the Dominion lose. And not just lose. Be broken. Across the galaxy, those watching on hidden channels and forbidden broadcasts trembled. The Varn had ruled for centuries. Their empire stretched across 1,000 systems. They'd never been defeated. Until now. On a civilian outpost in the fringes, a young insectoid from the core species whispered to his elders, "The humans, they did it." On a jungle moon in Sector 12, a reptilian resistance group cheered in secret, tears in their scaled eyes. "If they can fight," one hissed, "so can we." Hope, the most dangerous contagion of all, began to spread. Back on Earth, amid the ruins of cities and the stench of death, survivors emerged, some from bunkers, others from rubble. The air was still thick with smoke, but the skies were clearing. No more ships loomed above, only the wreckage remained. General Iwata stood atop the rubble of what had once been Tokyo's outer defense wall. He looked up at the distant stars and didn't smile. There was no joy, only silence and grief. "We lost everything," he said to the aide beside him, "and we still have to rebuild. But we're free." In a recovery tent outside what had once been Berlin, Dr. Alina Garvey sat beside a cracked data console, watching the logs. Calder's final message had played again and again on every screen. "Tell them we made it count." She whispered, "You did, Reese. God help us, you really did." But Earth didn't have time to grieve, because less than 24 hours later, something else happened. An incoming transmission was detected, not from the Varn, not from Earth, but from deep space, beyond any known system. The message was simple. "Humanity, we saw what you did, and we are coming." The transmission played on every frequency Earth had left, over makeshift radios in refugee camps, on flickering screens in military bunkers, even through the cracked speakers of destroyed comm towers, half buried under rubble. The voice was cold. Not robotic, but ancient, measured, deliberate. It didn't threaten, it simply declared, "Humanity, we saw what you did, and we are coming." Panic swept the remaining pockets of Earth's civilization. At first, many thought it was a trap, some last Varn deception to shake morale. But when the signal was traced, the truth hit even harder. The message hadn't come from anywhere near the Dominion's controlled territories. It had come from beyond the galactic rim, from the old silence, a place spoken of only in forgotten scrolls and corrupted star charts, a region where even the Varn feared to tread, a dead zone where entire scouting parties had vanished without a trace, where signals went in but never came out. And now something had come out. In the shattered ruins of the United Earth Council's emergency HQ, relocated beneath Iceland's volcanic crust, what was left of Earth's leadership gathered. They stood in a room where every other seat was marked by the absence of those who hadn't survived. A hologram flickered in the center. The message played again. "We are coming." Dr. Alina Garvey's voice broke the silence. "It's not a Varn dialect. I've scrubbed it through every language processor. Whatever this is, it's older, way older." General Iwata leaned forward. "Could it be another invasion?" "I don't know," she said, rubbing her temples. "But anything that waits in the silence and speaks now, after the Varn are broken, this isn't coincidence." A deep voice chimed in from the far end of the table, Colonel Hakim Saeed, leader of Africa's last air regiment. Maybe they were waiting to see if we were worth their attention. Maybe defeating the Varn just put us on someone else's map. Someone else. That thought alone was enough to turn stomachs. The room went quiet again. Until finally, someone dared to say what they all feared. What if we've just woken a god? They had no answers, only a location. The source of the signal had been triangulated, barely, thanks to Calder's team having rerouted orbital sensors before their final run. It wasn't precise, but it pointed to a dead sector called Merex Theta, a space with no recorded planets, no habitable moons, and no reason to exist. The signal had come from the black between stars, but it had been directed at Earth. Specifically. Personally. So Earth did the only thing it could. It answered. The response was short, not aggressive, not pleading. "We see you too. Come and speak." It was a gamble. But after surviving the Dominion, Earth had no illusions left about safety or peace. They were bloodied, broken, and nearly extinct. But they were awake now. Awake in a galaxy that had tried to ignore them. Awake in a universe that was watching. 5 days passed. On the 6th, a tear opened in space above what remained of Earth's moon. It wasn't a ship, not in the way anyone understood. It was more like a wound in the cosmos, a dark bloom that pulsed and bled light. And from it came a presence, not visible, not physical, but undeniable. Every mind on Earth felt it, a pressure behind the eyes, a whisper at the base of the skull. Some collapsed. Others screamed. Most just fell still, unable to speak, as if the gravity of another reality had suddenly passed through them. Then a voice, this time inside their minds. "You have chosen war, and you have survived. Now we must decide what you become." In orbit, Earth's last surviving warship, the Kavinsky, barely patched together from 3 others, sent a hasty transmission. "Identify yourselves. What authority do you represent?" The answer chilled the stars. "We are the architects, the ones before memory, the keepers of the first fire. You have broken the chain. You have killed your gods. Now we must judge if you are ready to replace them." The signal ended. No demands, no attacks, just a promise. And an invitation. The world didn't cheer. It didn't cry. It held its breath. The architects. No one knew what they were. Not truly. Not even the Dominion had records of them. At least none that survived. Every database, every scrap of scavenged Varn intelligence turned up the same thing whenever Merex Theta was mentioned. Redacted, corrupted, forbidden. And yet, Earth now had their attention. In orbit, the wound in space pulsed again. It didn't widen. It didn't release ships. It simply remained, watching, waiting. A silent star, bleeding curiosity. Humanity had become a subject of interest. Inside Earth's remaining command centers, fear turned to obsession. Dr. Alina Garvey hadn't slept in 3 days. She stared at the sensor data pouring from the anomaly. Gravitational ripples that shouldn't exist, quantum fluctuations that ignored every known law of physics. Whatever the architects were, they weren't bound to reality in any way humans understood. "I think they're multidimensional," she murmured to her assistant, voice raspy. "Not just aliens, but something that exists across timelines, across everything." "Like gods?" Alina looked at the anomaly, her eyes dry and bloodshot. Number worse, observers. Meanwhile, far below, on the crumbled edge of what was once Chicago, a broadcast began again. The architects were speaking. Not on screens, not through devices, through people. It began with a child, a mute girl in a relief shelter, who suddenly stood, her eyes glowing white, her voice echoing in a tone too deep for her throat. We have watched your wars, your hunger, your fire." Then in New Zealand, a blind monk walked into the sea and shouted the same message to the crashing waves. "We have seen your defiance, your cruelty, your will." And again, in the sky, the wound pulsed, responding. Then came the ultimatum. Through the bodies of the chosen, across continents and time zones, the architects spoke in unison. "Humanity, you stand on the threshold. Choose. You may ascend or be undone." Ascend or be undone. What did that even mean? At first, some thought it was a trick, maybe a psychological attack from a species far beyond understanding. But the architects made no demands, no threats. They simply left the choice. And the clock. Earth had 7 days. 7 days to decide whether to accept the invitation to ascend or reject it and seal itself off from whatever came next. Inside the council chambers, debate turned to chaos. "What if it's a trap?" shouted Colonel Saeed. "They want us to agree so they can erase us." "Or maybe they want to help," Alina countered. "They've seen what we're capable of. Maybe they think we're worthy." "Or maybe," Iwata muttered, "they want us to replace the Dominion as their enforcers." That was the unspoken fear. That all this, Earth's war, the fall of the Varn, the eyes of the galaxy turning toward humanity, wasn't just survival. It was a test, but no one could agree on what the right answer was. Scientists wanted to accept. Soldiers didn't trust it. Politicians feared they'd already lost control. And in the streets, among the broken, the starving, the traumatized, people were split too. Some prayed to the architects as gods. Others cursed them for interfering after the war was won. Most didn't care. They just wanted food, shelter, and peace. By day 3, the world was boiling over again. On day 4, everything changed. A second rift opened. This one over what remained of the Atlantic Ocean. But it wasn't the architects this time. It was them. The Varn. What was left of them? Not a fleet, not an army. Just a single battered vessel limping through the void, its hull scorched and cracked, its signal desperate. "We surrender." The galaxy's monsters had returned, not to conquer, but to beg. General Iwata stared at the transmission in stunned silence. "They're afraid." "They saw what's behind the curtain," Alina whispered. "They know what the architects are, and they'd rather kneel to us than face them alone." That was the turning point. The Varn, the terror of the stars, the architects of billions of deaths, were now on their knees. And humanity? It stood between annihilation and ascension, and had 3 days left to choose. Day 5 dawned with ash in the sky. Fires still burned across the planet, some set by war, others by fear. The choice hung over humanity like a sword made of light, ascend or be undone, and no one could agree on what either meant. Across Earth, every voice now screamed for attention. Religion surged, conspiracy ran wild, and worse, governments began turning on each other again. The unity forged in the blood and smoke of the Varn invasion was fracturing. In what was left of Paris, a mob stormed a surviving data tower, demanding Earth's leaders reject the architects and keep humanity human. Across the globe, in Indonesia, cults wearing silver masks stood on cliffs, chanting for the Great Taking to begin. In New America, a rogue faction of the military seized a forward launch site and fired a test missile directly into orbit, aimed near the rift. It vanished mid-flight, gone. No explosion, no trace, just gone. The architects didn't respond, not in words. But something changed. The skies began to bleed light. Crimson threads stretched across the upper atmosphere like torn fabric, rippling with colors no human eye had seen before. Gravity shifted, lightly, but enough to notice. Tides moved wrong. Machines glitched, And in some parts of the world, time itself stuttered. A man in Nairobi lived the same 5 minutes twice. A woman in São Paulo watched her dog blink out of phase for 3 full seconds before returning. The rift over the moon expanded. Slowly. Silently. It was clear now. The choice was not theoretical. It was coming for them. Back underground, in the Iceland command bunker, the council met one final time. The tension inside was near breaking. "We're not ready," Colonel Saeed growled. "We're fractured. We're still bleeding. If we accept now, we walk into the hands of something we don't understand. We trade one master for another." "And if we decline?" asked Garvey, her voice softer now, almost afraid. "Do we just go back to scraping food from ruins, waiting for the next predator to sniff us out?" "There's a third option," General Iwata said, his eyes locked on the slowly expanding rift above the moon. "We stand alone. We reject ascension. We deny judgment. We tell them we choose ourselves, whatever that means." "But the cost," Alina began. "I know," he interrupted, "but maybe that's the price of staying human." Before anyone could reply, the comms officer cut in. "Sir, you'll want to see this." The screen flickered. A grainy transmission came through. Not from space, from Mars. Specifically Olympus Mons. A base Earth had believed destroyed in the first Varn wave. The face that appeared on the screen was gaunt, bloodied, and alive with fire. Captain Reese Calder, or what was left of him. His voice crackled through interference. "If this reaches Earth, know that I lived. Barely. I ejected before the core detonated, landed on a fragment, floated for days, then something found me." He looked upward, eyes unfocused. "They brought me here, not the Varn. Them, the architects." The room fell still. Calder continued, voice thick with something too large for him to carry. "They showed me things, not visions, histories, futures, every choice we could make, and every price that comes with it." He leaned in close, face full of weariness. "This isn't about right or wrong. It's about what we want to become. The Varn were the test. The architects are the door, and we're standing on the threshold. Tell Earth this." He looked directly into the camera. "If we ascend, we won't be the same. We'll lose parts of ourselves, our pain, our rage, our limits, but we'll become something vast, something no species has ever dared to be." He paused. "But if we stay, we keep our soul, our dirt, our blood, our stubborn, stupid, beautiful humanity, and we fight the next storm, and the one after that, with our fists and our fire." The screen blinked. Static. He was gone. Alina turned to Iwata, tears in her eyes. "It's not a test anymore." "No," he agreed. "It's a mirror." The vote was held, not by governments, not by generals, but by the people. One message, sent to every device, one simple prompt. Do we ascend? Earth chose. And on the 7th day, the rift opened wide. The rift split the sky like a wound that would never heal. It pulsed, not with light, but with invitation. The crimson glow bathed Earth's atmosphere, turning clouds to blood-colored streaks and oceans to mirrors of fire. Time rippled again. Clocks stopped. Machines froze. Even the wind seemed to halt, as if the world itself waited to hear what humanity had decided. And then came the broadcast. Not from a government, not from a council, but from everywhere. Across every surviving screen, speaker, or shard of technology still connected to Earth's fractured networks, the same voice echoed. We chose. We stay. The message carried no anthem, no celebration. It was quiet, steady, unbreakable. Earth had rejected ascension, and the sky responded. Above the moon, the rift changed. Its swirling core of impossible light shimmered, slowed, and collapsed inward, folding into itself like paper burned from the edges. It didn't vanish, not entirely. It left something behind, a shape, no bigger than a city, blacker than space, floating in perfect silence, a monolith. And then the final voice of the architects came, not in words, but in thought, in pressure, felt in the marrow of every living thing. Then so be it. You have chosen fire over divinity, will over transcendence, struggle over peace. You remain as you are. But know this, your decision echoes. You are no longer children. Now you are seen. And with that, they were gone. No explosion, no fanfare, just absence, like waking from a dream you couldn't explain. For a moment, Earth stood still. Then, the world began to move again. Slowly, raggedly, but with purpose. In the days that followed, something changed. Not in the sky, not in the soil, but in the people. There was no miracle recovery, no golden age overnight. But there was clarity. A sense that the world, as broken as it was, belonged to them now. Entirely. The Varn never returned. Rumors spread that the remaining ships scattered into deep space, fleeing not from Earth, but from what had seen Earth. They were no longer conquerors. They were refugees. In the ruins of London, people planted gardens in the shell of a fallen battleship. In Mumbai, children played on broken Varn armor like it was just another part of the playground. In Brazil, engineers rebuilt their first clean energy generator from scraps of alien tech and old wind turbines. And above it all, the monolith remained. Watching. Unmoving. Unspoken. Some feared it, others worshipped it, most ignored it, but all respected it. It was a reminder, not of what was denied, but of what was earned. Humanity had stood on the edge of godhood and turned away, not out of ignorance, but out of choice. They chose their scars. They chose their imperfection. They chose their freedom. Years passed. The galaxy changed. Whispers spread to distant systems that the humans had done the unthinkable. The Varn were dead. The architects had spoken to them, and they had survived. No longer were humans seen as primitives. They were seen as a new force, unpredictable, unforgiving, unrelenting. A species that had chosen war over words and survived the cost. In backwater bars on trading moons, smugglers told stories of Earth, how they stared down gods and refused to blink. On distant worlds, slaves of fallen empires whispered the name human like a prayer. And on Earth, life moved forward. Not perfect, not painless, but free. In a small cemetery overlooking what was once Washington, D.C., a stone bore a name and a simple inscription. Captain Reese Calder. He made it count. Above him the sky was clear. No ships, no gods, just stars, waiting, watching. And maybe, just maybe, wondering what humanity would do next.